Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Good day, everyone, and welcome to Asia's webinar series. We'll be presenting through India Lake today. If you are new to the webinar platform, we would request you to go to the resource list to familiarize yourself with the webinar platform. You can basically look at switching your audio through computer or through phone. You may refresh your screen if there is a lag, if you don't hear. There is a different tool section for your understanding where you can download the presentations, understand speaker bios, and uh, that's more to help you in this regards. We'll be playing a quick video specifically to uh, help you understand what we do, who we are.
There are over 1.5 billion vehicles on the road today that all have something in common: the essential intelligence of S&P Global Mobility. We provide invaluable information across the entire value chain, enabling vehicle manufacturers, suppliers, dealers, and consumers to make decisions with conviction. Our proprietary data is used to set pricing, plan future production, determine demand, and accurately predict make and model preferences. We give consumers powerful and intuitive tools to help them buy vehicles, understand what they're worth, schedule service, and decide when to sell. And as the industry undergoes its most profound shift since mass production, our data and expertise provide forward-looking insights to improve sustainability and advance innovations such as electrification, autonomous driving, and digital retail. The next chapter in automotive history is being written. Pioneering decisions are being made using the essential intelligence of S&P Global Mobility.
So thank you for watching this video. We just tried to help you understand what we do.
There are over 1.5 billion.
Okay, so welcome to today's webinar. We'll be discussing a very interesting topic today on changing contours of Indian automotive industry. As the whole world goes through a paradigm shift, automotive industry of India is also a part of that transformation. We'll try and assess various conditions, what's happening in the automotive India landscape. So to basically discuss on the very important topic, we have our colleagues, Mr. Puneet Gupta, who's the Director for Forecasting Services for India and ASEAN region, joining us along
Hi,
with
good afternoon, everybody.
Mr. Vivek Sharma, who is our powertrain expert for the region. We'll deep dive into multiple topics around the changing landscape of Indian automotive industry, right from the policy reforms to EV way forward, CAFE norms impacting the overall industry, and whatnot. So before we deep dive into the discussion, I think we'll like to start off with few poll questions, as you may, to basically check the pulse of the audience today. So I'll probably start off with the first question for you. You'll get 30 seconds to answer that. So if the first question is, what are your sentiments for the Indian car market for the calendar year 2025 relative to the previous year 2024? Do you think it'll be more optimistic? Do you think it'll be less optimistic? Or do you think the landscape shall remain the same? We encourage you to answer these questions, and we'll discuss more in detail about each question when we start the panel discussion. So I think it's time that I move on to the responses. Oh, okay. So as per the current scenario, most of you feel this year would be more optimistic as compared to the previous year. I hope we are in line with this, and we'll discuss more on the same topic in our presentation discussion today. So the next question for the audience is, how much growth do you expect in passenger car market in calendar year 2025 in India? Do you think it'll be 0 to 3%, Do you think it'll be 3 to 5%, or do you think it'll be greater than 5%? So once again, do you think the growth pattern would be 0 to 3%, option B 3 to 5%, or it'll be greater than 5%? I'll move on to the results of this particular question. Oh, nice. So majority of the audience, close to 56%, believes this is 3 to 5%. And this is probably in line with what S&P Global Mobility thinks as well. So we'll deep dive into this discussion once we start the panel discussion. Moving on to the next question. With rising input cost, how do you see car prices evolving in 2025 in India? So do you think car prices will keep rising significantly? Do you think discount and offers will balance the price hike? Or do you think the automakers will introduce budget-friendly variants? This is an interesting question and probably one of the key factors that will change the landscape going forward. So as the question mentioned, do you think the car prices will keep on increasing? Is an option A. Discounts will provide the parity. Or 3, automakers will introduce budget-friendly variants. Moving on to the responses, it's a mixed bag. Large number of people says discount and offers will balance the price hike. A very close second believes that car prices will keep rising significantly. And a close third says automakers will introduce budget-friendly variants. This is an interesting stat. We'll discuss more about it in the coming presentation. Now, what do you think is the priority for Indian product planners today? Do you think premiumization is a top priority as an option A, or option B? Affordability continues to be the top priority as per previous years for the Indian car market. Choose your option wisely. Moving on to the responses. Oh, I think affordability still holds a larger truth in Indian car market as per the audience response. We'll come to this as well. Now, this is an interesting question. What powertrain technology do you think will gain the most traction in India in 2025? Do you think it will be electric vehicles? Do you think hybrid will take a leap? Do you think CNG shall continue to dominate? Or do you think gasoline will still be the larger part of the powertrain option? So moving on to the responses. As expected, I believe hybrids are going to be the game changers going forward. And I believe EVs and CNG stand close second, and gasoline alone is probably shrinking. Yeah. So the next question is more to do with alternative fuel options. Which alternative fuel do you think can be India's secret weapon in fighting pollution? As a country, we are moving towards net zero targets. Government is looking at cleaner energy. So it's an interesting question, an important question at that from that standpoint. So do you think biofuels, ethanol, and biodiesel would be the way forward, or CNG or bio-CNG or LNG would be a good option? Or do you think green hydrogen will displace everything? Oh, this is nice. I think Vivek-san, you have your work cut out once we start the discussion. People think green hydrogen is the way forward. So
very
I think,
interesting. Very
you should be
replies, yeah.
you should be ready with some insights on this topic.
Correct. Yeah.
The next question is around WLTC norms that are redefining the fuel efficiency. what will be the biggest impact on consumers? Higher vehicle prices but lower emissions, improve fuel economy and savings. Option C, limited model choices due to compliance hurdles. This is a superb question actually, and I believe an interesting answer coming out of it as well. Yeah, let's move on to the responses. Improve fuel economy and savings. A larger portion of the audience thinks there will be improve fuel economy and savings.
Yeah, very right choice. I think very interesting one. Yeah.
Yep. So moving on. If you could solve one challenge to fast track India's net zero goals, what would it be? Another interesting question. Would it be affordable EVs and faster alternative fuel adoption, more charging stations and infrastructure expansion, stricter emission norms, and greater consumer awareness? I think sustainability is on the mind of everyone today with our government pushing for it. So this should be an important discussion today. Vivek.
Yeah, I think options are somehow interlinked also, and they complement each other. But yeah, very interesting to know, I think, the right answer from the audiences here.
I think these percentages tell you the entire story in itself, right? So it's interesting, and we should dwell more on that in the coming discussion. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that's about it from the poll questions, and thanks for answering outrightly and truly. We really appreciate your response. I think without further ado, we'll deep dive into the discussion today. The topic for today's discussion is changing contours of Indian automotive industry, and I've been joined by Mr. Puneet Gupta, who's the director for India and ASEAN for S&P Global Mobility. Puneet-san comes with an experience of more than 2 decades working with key automotive players in the past. He's worked with the likes of Maruti and Renault before he joined us, and he's now leading our forecasting services. Vivek, on the screen, you can see he's our principal analyst for the Powertrain forecast services for India region. Vivek also comes with a rich experience of working with Honda and Hindustan Motors in the past. And I'm your host and moderator for today. My name is Ankit, and I'll be moderating this session along with our experts. So without further ado, Puneet-san, I think let's begin today's discussion. And I have a very important question for you that will probably set the stage for today's discussion. Puneet-san, what do you think India as an economy is growing exponentially? And how do you think the S&P Global envision the future of mobility in India?
Yeah, thank you, Ankit, and a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. To answer about Indian economy, how do we see it? So I think there is no doubt that India is in the sweet spot today. And even for next 2 decades, so we feel that India will be in sweet spot till the time, the workforce participation is increasing and the youth is driving the consumption. And so we'll obviously get, into more statistics, but seeing that India, is the 5th biggest economy in the world today, and soon we will be crossing Japan, and we will be the 4th biggest economy in the world. So, but just few statistics out here, so if we see today, so if we see last 10 years, so India GDP actually doubled, and actually in next 7 years, so today we are at around 3.5 trillion US dollars as an Indian economy, and we'll actually double, in next 7 years. So clearly, India is moving, but what is very important is, that as our economy GDP grows, the GDP per capita, moves from a $2,500 to $4,500. So it means that India is transitioning from a lower to a middle income, society. So when we talk about middle income, we talk about, obviously more disposable incomes, and obviously we talk about more aspirations, right? And then, if we have a look at a sector-wise economy, so clearly here you can see that for next almost 30 years. So services is going to play a key role, right? And when services will grow, obviously on the expense of agriculture or on the expense of industry, so clearly it reflects that we are moving from a low income to a high income society, right? So then, when we are moving towards more service sector, more high income society, so it, that primarily, that we will be needing more mobility options. So it may be two-wheelers, three-wheelers, CVs, buses, so everything, right? So I think that is how mobility is going to play a key role. And on the other side, obviously when we talk about India today, so we say that almost more than 60%, 65%, is rural market. So, but in next 22 decades, 2 to 3 decades, the urban share is really going to drastically. And in the coming decades, we can expect that there will be a shift from rural to urban cities, and a population size of almost equivalent to United States will move to urban markets. So clearly, urban markets will drive the growth. So obviously we may have more urban cities in India, which will be driving the growth, but parallelly, it will be the rural markets also, so they won't be left behind, because if we see today, the income in the rural markets is also going up, right? So clearly, it's a mix. So, both urban and rural India will fire, both India and Bharat will fire, which will contribute to sales of mobility. So primarily, obviously public transportation here will also play a key role. But since there will be aspirations, so it will also be a case of more private, personal, transportation. So clearly we are bullish about India, and obviously in the next talks we will talk about why it is so. And further adding, so which again is very important, if we see few dynamics, so I think almost in next 2 decades, so India is going to contribute more than 20% of the working age population. So clearly, when the global when India is contributing to the global workforce, and almost equivalent to 20%, it means a big chunk of that income is going to come to India. And otherwise also, if we see the income level, so we are expecting almost a five-fold rise, for people, almost close to 25 million people will earn more than $35,000. So clearly, India is sitting at a junction, where we really expect the economy to boom, and I think today we are one of those nations which have a very, very high political stability, which means that the policy direction is quite stable and in a line with the mid and the long term. So clearly, in S&P, we are bullish about mobility in India. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Puneet-san. Continuing the conversation from where you left in this question, right? And you clearly stating that India is going to be on the growth path for the next 2 decades, maybe 3 decades. And with Viksit Bharat being the probable promotion of the government of India, and every industry is talking about it, and automotive is a part of that transformation. What do you think would be the top 3 disruptors, as you said, for the next 1 or 2 decades that might lead us to that? And specifically talking about the car market, what do you think would be the real challenges towards that particular goal?
Yeah. So first, I think coming to disruptors, so I think, as I said, today we are at around $2,500 GDP per capita. And when China was at the similar levels, so that was the time when China had a hyper growth, so clearly China market exploded. And just in 3 years time, the China car penetration went up from 17 vehicles per thousand to almost 43 vehicles per thousand, so clearly $2,500, is an inflection point. Obviously, here we are not saying that India will follow exactly China trend, but one thing what we can clearly say is, that the need for vehicles, the need for cars, primarily because of the higher aspirations, will obviously go up, and maybe we may take more time, in reaching GDP per capita from $2,500 to $4,500, almost 7 years till 2030-31, but in the same span, we will be, our penetration, car penetration will also go up. So clearly, when a lot of global markets are actually declining in terms of car sales, India is one of the shining markets across the globe where the car markets will go up. And obviously, we are not here. And if we talk about, when China moved from $4,500 to 10,000 US dollars, right? So you can imagine the kind of growth, the need of cars which went up, almost from 43, China car penetration to almost 150, right? So similarly, when you talk about India, so when India also maybe India may take more time, almost 2050 to reach or close to $10,000 GDP per capita, but you can imagine the kind of potential of what India has in terms of car penetration. So obviously, this is one, which we feel can be a big disruptor, but obviously it has to be supported by proper policies. It has to be supported by, for example, in China we had a scrappage scheme during 2007 to 10 which really helped car market push. The taxes were low, right? So let's see what India does, but obviously there is a clear potential out there. And the second disruptor, what we really feel today is that we are feeling that a lot of companies are going at a state level thought process. So why we are saying it, because if you see today top 7 states of India, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, the GDP of these states is more than almost 175, the GDP of 175 countries in the world. So clearly the states are becoming big, right? So maybe now the OEMs have to tweak their strategy, because at the end of the day, these states have potential. So there may be different needs across the country. India is anyways a very diversified market. And to give you an example here, obviously in the few next discussions we'll talk more about it. But just to touch on it, today in Delhi, the diesel car penetration is just 5%, right? And whereas if you talk about the national average, that's roughly around 17, 18%. And maybe players like Mahindra have a diesel penetration of around close to 80%. So see in Delhi, how Delhi is different from the other cities, big cities, and similarly states. So we see, states are becoming very important. And now it's time for the OEMs, to look at the state-specific customers. I think that's very important, because at the end of the day, this is going to be a big disruptor, for the OEMs who follow this trend. Because at the end of the day, there can be, certain tax benefits on hybrids, on EVs in some states. In some states, it can be certain benefits on, for example, CNG, right? So it's going to be a very competitive spirit. Obviously, you need to plan your strategy pretty well. But at the end of the day, we really feel this can be a game changer for India. And third is, and about, I think you talked about top 3 challenges. And I think one of the big challenges, what India is facing today is, because on one side, we are on the growth path. And on the other side, our government is really obsessed about regulations. So I think too many regulations is primarily good for country, right? But at the end of the day, we are in a price-sensitive market like India. The car prices are really going up. So which somewhere will hit the growth in India. So clearly I think that's the first challenge, because our growth, our economy has come up at a time when there are pressure around sustainability, there are pressure around green energy, there are pressure around green mobility, green finance, right? And India has to sail through these aspirations, and then also may have challenges, but at the parallelly, the industry will also grow. But we feel that industry is moving in the right direction with adopting a powertrain pluralism, primarily opting for multi-fuel types. It may be greener fuels like PHEVs or hybrids or electrics, right? But that's one challenge. And then second challenge what we see is, because we are seeing the pollution levels in the big cities is really going havoc, right? So, and primarily generally we have seen in India or across the globe, mobility is a sector which is being blamed, primarily blamed for such a pollution, because that can also put brakes on the growth of the country. And then the third challenge which I see is which we see is primarily are dependent on the imports, typically for oil or CNG. Today even a fuel like CNG, which is an emerging fuel in India, almost 44% of it is imported, right? So clearly these dent our balance sheets, and we may need to follow more greener approach. But at the end of the day, that will always be a challenge, even if we shift to EVs or even if we shift to CNG. But gradually, we need to see how we can dependent more on renewables. So I think these are the top disruptors which I see, or the top challenges, which I see in the market.
Yeah, thank you, Puneet san. I think very valid points. So moving on and putting the light on Vivek san, specifically understanding what do you think, Vivek san, uh, since decarbonization and net zero targets is the main agenda of the government right now, and Puneet san also touched upon multi-fuel pathway as well as need for pollution-free India. Do you think India has in it repertoire to become a global leader in clean powertrain innovation, and what will it take from our side to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that great question, and thank you, audience, for answering the poll questions. Very interesting answers there, and thank you, Puneet, for setting the tone for this panel discussion. Yeah, absolutely. I think India has the potential to emerge as the global leader in clean powertrain innovation, giving its unique dynamics, engineering talent, and the strong policy momentum, which Puneet also highlighted in his talks. And if you see, this is our projections, what we are right now projecting in our forecast. For example, in 2030, we are projecting around over 50% of XEV vehicles, which is basically including the electrified ICE and also EVs. This includes the kind of mild hybrids, which are going to be a major chunk. We believe it is going to play a major chunk going ahead. Because being frugal in nature, they would be kind of very cost sensitive and much more alluring to customers going ahead. Then EVs, I think right now government and OEMs are also focusing on EVs, whether it is driven by policy or whether it is driven by cafe norms which are coming ahead. So penetration is also going to be around 18 or 18.5% going ahead by 2030. And if you see overall this graph, where we see that penetration of XEVs is almost increasing from 18% to almost 58% by 2031. So that's a big change. And if you see overall, I mean, we are kind of moving towards this XCV trends, and it is increasing ahead. And more, I think innovation is taking place. We are strengthening our R&D and ecosystem. Recently, we saw that announcement of Toyota kind of opening a R&D center in India, and it is going to be a big change. And Maruti Suzuki already has an existing big R&D center in Rohtak, and MRV Mahindra Research Valley in Chennai, and we have already seen what kind of products it can bring with the E6 and XC09, and ERC, one of the oldest, I think, from Tata, and one of the good engineering center which we feel is kind of taking a part in this change. I mean, talking about more on this clean powertrain innovation, I think localized manufacturing and supply chain development will also play an important part. I think, I mean, OEMs have already realized that, I mean, they need to leverage this production link incentive schemes to boost the domestic, manufacturing, whether it is on the component side or on the product sides, and also on the battery sides. And it is, the work is going on, and the likes of Tata Motors, they are already working on this ecosystem, and they are developing a robust ecosystem which will help in futures, and they are basically setting the base for other OEMs also going ahead with their supplier companies already, collaborating with global majors already. We are seeing that. Also, I think India needs to kind of secure supply chains on the mineral side also, whether it is lithium, cobalt, and rare earth metals. I think this year budget has the announcement of critical mineral mission, and I think players will enter this, although it is a bit slow, I think, but going ahead, I think more and more interest would be shown by various companies, including mining companies and also automotive companies, into this. Then again, I think policy and regulatory supports remains an important factor. I think we need to maintain a consistent policy framework for a long-term, investor confidence. For example, the GST, which we are kind of having right now on EVs, if it remains same going ahead, although I think the challenges will they be there, and I think government would be kind of tweaking it and increasing the tax. But I think if it remains same, it would be kind of very confidence boosting for outside players. And we are already seeing likes of Mercedes and Tesla talking about that in media and also in various forum. And I think aligning to, in the regulatory terms, aligning to CAFE 3 and CAFE 4, I think is an important task. And I think they need to match this with the global standards to promote more cleaner technologies. And I think this is under discussion. And once the CAFE is finalized, I think all OEMs will start kind of pushing towards more clean fuels and more clean innovation in their research also. And also, I think India can take advantage of, utilizing some global partnership and also market expansion, looking at the platform which we had like G20 COP, and where I think we can showcase our leadership in clean mobility. And even I think we as S&P Global have Sera Week in US, where I think various partnership, or you can say Indian players go there and speak about various innovation happening in India. And that is happening not only in automotive sector, but in the energy sector. So it's a big opportunity for OEMs and also the energy companies to go and speak there. And then I think consumer adoption and the ecosystem growth remains the major kind of input here. And we need to expand the EV charging stations, and also I think gas CNG or bio CNG refueling infrastructure, which is taking up pace. And we see now the expansion of CNG to tier 2, tier 3 cities, and this is boosting the sales. And that is why last year we saw that CNG. We have a slide on that also. That last year CNG surpassed the diesel production. And also, I think one key factor is, it has been in discussion since long, I think, is the scrappage policy. Although some of the companies have, already announced into this, but I think going ahead, I think this will be an important one. And states like Delhi, when they are, I think recently the EV2 policy launched by them, they are saying that the vehicles would be completely banned or removed from Delhi. So I think these policies make more sense going ahead. I think OEMs and other partners can push into this. So overall, if you see, India's strength lies in the frugal engineering and large scale manufacturing position, which can position itself for a kind of leadership into clean powertrain innovation, and with focus on strategy that blends with the policies from the government and the collaboration between private and the government sector. Also the global partnerships. I think India can not only meet the domestic clean mobility, but also export sustainable solution to the other parts of the world.
Thank you, Vivek. I think you've set the right context for the further discussion. I think moving on, Puneet-san, we did talk about challenges, disruptors, and we're talking about the clean energy. I mean, one important topic for every OEM right now is, though through the changing landscape, how to sustain the sales, right? And with this headwind, we have been onto a very slow start in 2025. And as part of the poll question as well, right, we saw audience being very optimistic with respect to the sales this year. So what do you think would be the sales growth in 2025? And why do you think sales is under pressure today?
Ankit, you said it rightly. So undoubtedly, demand is under pressure. And, obviously there is optimism in India, but that is not in sync, with the ground realities. So why I'm saying is because if we see last year, calendar year, Q4, obviously, because of heavy discounting, obviously, we saw a push in retails, right? But then this year, the first 2 months, again have been, quite painful, for the OEMs, because the discounts still continue. still there is pressure, and primarily markets are not bouncing back. And maybe one of the reasons is, which is quite obvious, is because last 2-3 years, if we see, we had a double-digit growth rate, right? Except last year, which was 4%. But otherwise, if you see, we really had a good sales, and primarily, today we are sitting on a real high base. But then more than that, obviously there are a few logical, pointers which reflects that the demand pressure would continue. So few of them would obviously be job uncertainties, because typically in IT sector, we are feeling that the companies have a heat, and it is not that there may be job losses, but it's primarily that there is a fear to lose the job, which obviously impacts the consumer. So then affordability hit, because if we see today, I think one of the big reasons have been that OEMs have been increasing the prices. Even this year we have seen 2 price hikes by almost most of the OEMs, which obviously is a big concern. So in a price sensitive market like India, if the car prices goes up, so that creates obviously customer wants to wait, you go for it. And so then is stock markets is another reason, but then one of the biggest reason is what we see is NIP, so which is the non-income proof buyer. Now this is a very important category, because if you see in India, first time buyers are around 55%, and primarily if that segment doesn't click, then obviously there is a problem. So, and if we see the first time buyers, primarily a lot of it was coming from non-income proof buyers, so because the banks, the NBFCs, have tightened their loan norms. So that has, in a way impacting the consumers. And since, there are a lot of consumers, who were actually into jobs, but in last 3-4 years, they saw opportunity move into startups or businesses, small businesses, right? Because they went to their hometowns, or, they were a little aspirational. They had an opportunity because of a lot of government schemes. So now, since digitization did help India, right, in terms of tracking these kind of people, which actually helped in push in NIP buyer in last 4-5 years. But now if you see that digitization is becoming a problem, because at the end of the day, banks can track, these customers pretty well, and they can see, that customer income level is not there, primarily he may not be able to pay the EMIs. And I think that is becoming a pain for almost last 1 year, because, and that's why we are seeing even banks becoming stricter. So I think this is a non-income proof buyer is a very important category, because we want that first time buyers should go up. And once it happens, then we can really see maybe in the coming years the growth to come back. But otherwise, this year we feel the growth to be roughly around 3.5%, which obviously is less than the previous year, but still we are talking about a big base. So we are talking about more than close to 200,000 vehicles coming additionally on the road from what came in 2024. And going forward also, seeing that we are coming close to CAFE 3 norms, so obviously OEMs may try their best, to push the vehicles, because CAFE 3 may come up with price hikes. So, but we may see a kind of a growth, coming further next year, and we may expect a better 2026. And also this year, we are expecting a kind of an interest rate cut. So obviously if there is an interest rate cut of almost 75 basis point this year, then next year, we may start seeing that advantage. So clearly we have seen that there is always a lag of 6 months or something like that, when the rates are cut. So I think 2026 should be definitely a better year, but after that we may have CAFE 3 norms, and going forward, obviously we'll keep on seeing the markets really going up. So overall, in long term, obviously, as I said, we are a growing economy, which is aspirational, right? Our penetration levels are really low, and the government is trying to bring in through production-linked incentive schemes. They are really trying to put India in the China +1 strategy, so which may also help manufacturing and industry to grow. So overall, we feel that by 2031, so India should be close to somewhere around 6.5 million cars, domestic sales, cars plus LCVs, domestic sales on the road. But otherwise, but if I put it in contrast with a lot of global big markets, you clearly see that India is really outperforming, while most of the big markets are declining, but India is clearly outperforming. So we should not see it as just lower single digit growth, but we should see it relative to how the big global economies are doing. And obviously, seeing the global uncertain world we live in, I really feel, this is primarily a good growth for India to go on. Yeah.
So thank you, Puneet. Thank you, Puneet. Bringing you back, Vivek-san, to the discussion. Vivek-san, Puneet-san talked about the pressure on sales, looking at different dimensions for growth in India. He did talk about multi-powertrain options, right? EV being one of them. And if we look at a global scenario as well, right? EV was on a high and then it sort of plateaued over the period of time in last 6 months. So how do you think India as a country should strike a balance between EV and other alternative fuel options? And specifically with the landscape changing towards CNG, biofuels, and other options available. And so, yeah, I mean, how do you think we should strike a balance between EV as an option, as an outright option versus alternative fuels?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a very important and great questions and question right now. And considering, I mean, the scenario, as Puneet-san already mentioned, powertrain pluralism, I think going ahead, I think this multi-fuel strategy would be the key for India. Because India is kind of a very diverse country with different, terrains and even different, as Puneet mentioned in his slide, that economy of certain states is very high and certain states still on the rural side. So, I mean, this plays an important role. And I think in powertrain strategy, I think segment-specific approach would be more important. For example, EVs might go well in kind of urban, or you can say where short distance travel commute is there, and then CNG, bio CNG can be used as a cost effective solution. So rural markets, basically, when the infrastructure expands to tier 2, tier 3 cities, it can be a very viable solution. And in our slides, if you see, I mean, last year, as I mentioned previously also, I think CNG passenger vehicles surpassed uh, the diesel production, and this is in itself is a big change, and government is also pushing this a lot. Although I think the APM prices, or you can see the CNG which the city retail operator buy from government, have been seeing a constant price increase, but still this remains much cheaper than gasoline and diesel. And if you see OEM comparison, Maruti Suzuki right now is the leader with almost 70% share, or you can say 67 to 68% share in 2025. And then going ahead, I think Tatas are very much pushing on CNG, and I think Hyundai, Kia, and other players, including Mahindra's, would also kind of be launching CNG vehicles. So coming back to that questions, where we are talking about balance, or you can say between EVs and alternative, I think policy harmonization plays a major role here. I think we need to kind of implement targeted, or you can say target incentives for different fuel technologies. For example, right now, some Japanese OEMs are working on biofuels. So, I mean, that fuel powertrain is a bit expensive compared to gasoline. So, consumer, to lure consumer to buy that, I think they need to kind of reduce that gap. And also, the availability of fuel remains a challenge. But overall, if that consumer gap is being addressed by certain kind of incentives, or you can say policies are being introduced. So I think this would be very beneficial. And for EVs, I think government is striking the right balance, although I think challenges are there by increasing, or you can say focus on charging infrastructure. And I think more and more focus is going there. And I think another important parameters from a technical point of view would be to maintain the life cycle emission management right now. We need to adopt a well-to-wheel approach, I think, going ahead. to reduce the true carbon footprint for each fuel type. I think going ahead, that will play an important role. And we need to support kind of cleaner fuel production processes. I mean, going ahead, I mean, if we need to promote hydrogen, then it has to be, the production of hydrogen has to be carbon neutral, which at present is not, to be exact. And then I think going ahead, I think more and more industry collaborations take place, like more and more energy companies, as I talked earlier, between automakers and energy companies and even government bodies. They co-developed solutions, across the energy ecosystem. So this will kind of promote clean kind of powertrains going ahead. So all in all, I think by fostering an inclusive energy ecosystem and ensuring fair market competition, I think India can achieve a balance between, a balance, or you can say transition towards clean mobility, while addressing the energy security, which remains an important parameter. Puneet already mentioned we are importing even natural gas, and gasoline is almost 90% import. And this will help to kind of reduce emissions going ahead.
Got it. So thank you, Vivek san. Bringing back Puneet san into the mix of discussion, we'll probably shift gears, right? We'll talk about segments right now. Puneet san, we have seen the evolution in terms of SUVs in last decade or so, and say hatchbacks and sedans going down in Indian market. So what do you think is in store for us going forward? Do you think sedans and hatchbacks would make a strong comeback, or would SUVs continue to rule? So yeah, that's more or less it.
Right. So if we see the present scenario, I think there is no doubt, and I think that's very clear from the graph also, that there is that SUVs, they clearly outshine hatchbacks and sedans. So primarily you can see SUVs, so it may be compact SUVs. So any category in SUVs, has grown. So it may be compact SUVs, mid-size SUVs, and or large SUVs, right? On the other side, if you see hatchbacks and sedans, so both these categories, have been degrowing. But the only difference is, that if we see in hatchbacks, the premium compact, relatively is growing, and the bigger impact is more on entry compact, so I think that's point one. And on the other side, if you see premium sedans, so premium sedans have been really degrowing. While the entry sedans obviously have been degrowing, but the relative, degrowth have been less in the entry sedan segment. And then maybe premium sedan customers are moving on to SUVs. But yeah, there are a category of customers, who still feel sedan is comfortable. They want to move as close to the road, in terms of ground clearance. But otherwise, I think it's very clear that SUVs will rule, the market. And this is also a global trend, right? And primarily, in a market like India, where by financial year 2030, almost 85% of the buyers, will be Gen Z, Gen Y, right? So obviously these are the customers who are young, right? So who really wants to drive something which is rugged, which is spacious, right? So somewhere, we feel that SUVs, will be a way to go forward. But parallelly, considering that the penetration levels are too low in India, right? So hatchbacks will never lose, in terms of their importance. So obviously their share may be taken by kind of mini compact SUVs, right? But at the end of the day, hatchbacks will continue. But yeah, so in a way, if we say that a mini SUV is a segment, right? Mini compact, so then that is also a segment which will grow. But yeah, hatchbacks and SUVs, is something which will keep on growing. But at the end of the day, we have to realize that almost now SUVs is coming close to 55-60% penetration, right? So and primarily, it's getting to more of a saturation, because almost 55-60% is now SUV market. So clearly, I think hatchbacks has a place, right? But mini SUVs are eating into hatchbacks, but parallelly, so SUV should stable somewhere around these numbers, and I think exact can be found out from forecast. So I think, yeah, that's all from me.
So thank you, Puneet-san. Vivek-san, bringing you to the mix again. I think the key important question right now is the upcoming cafe norms. How do you think are going to reshape the India's market going forward? And an extension to that question is, what do you think the next decade holds for EV growth in India? So if you can actually answer both of these questions together,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
linking cafe norms and EV evolution in India going forward.
yeah. Yeah, I think again a very important topic in the industry, and I think as cafe norms, what we say is the corporate average fuel consumption or corporate average fuel economy, whatever you call it. I think these are the strongest regulatory tools which are driving the powertrain innovation right now in the industry. And with stricter and more stringent CAFE 3 and CAFE 4, which is expected in 2032. In 2032. So these norms are going to be a major disruptor right now, and OEMs are increasingly investing into electrification and also fuel efficient technology. And these includes basically various parameters. Like for an example, right now more and more focus is on electrification, I think, to meet those stringent target. And then hybrids have also a role to play here. I think they are also be overall to manage their overall fleet economy. I think we that plays a major importance. And I think it also helps OEM to diversify that portfolio, where they can have a balanced product mix of fuel efficient internal combustion engine, hybrids, as well as EVs. And overall, I think supply chain evolution will also take place. So in the essence, I think the CAFE norms are acting as a catalyst for sustainable innovation and compelling automakers to build vehicles that are not only different, but that are not only efficient, but also kind of align with the India's long-term environment goal. Like you mentioned, decarbonization is an important point, and the road ahead we see is that we see is more and more collaboration, accelerated technology adoption, and a clear push towards cleaner mobility. So, talking about your second question, if you see this slide, this basically talks about the current EV status right now. For example, it all started with Nexon EV, where we had only 6 models in 2020. And then last year we had 25 models. And this year it is expected to increase to almost 41 models. So, this year, what we saw in Bharat Mobility was the onslaught of Indian OEMs with lots of EVs launches. So, going ahead, I think EV technology and in long term, I think India is going to play a major role. And although our penetration rates, what we are showing is going to be 20%, or you can say around 12 lakh vehicles during that period of time. So, but that plays a major important role, and I think we would be exporting more and more vehicles to various countries. We already saw that from Suzuki, where kind of they are exporting to Europe and other countries also they are targeting. And going ahead, I think likes of Mahindras and other, even Tata might export to other countries. Also, I think I highlighted the CAFE norms. It plays a major role, and I think OEMs are targeting that, and government is going to be very strict this time. Once that CAFE limit is fixed, which is going to be happen very soon this year. So I think OEMs will, have a tough stance on their side. So if you look at our long-term projection, we are around for example, around 27% EVs by 2035. And ICE, again, I would play a major role, and I think India would be the last man standing in ICE. Although I think it will modify itself in form of CNG, in hybrids, or also, mild hybrids and PHEVs, Puneet also talked about. Then concept of REEV, which is increasing in China, might get adoption in India also later on in the later stages, or you can say in the first half of the next decade, we might see OEMs pushing for those vehicles. And these technology definitely makes sense for India. So right now there is a tussle there's a healthy competition, I must say, in the powertrain segment within themselves. And ultimately, I think it's the consumer who remains the king, and he will decide the path of EV adoption and various clean mobility, and Indian consumer is smart enough to, I think, do that. And we are already seeing that in metros where people are opting for more and more cleaner fuel vehicles going ahead. So that's all from my side.
Yeah, thank you, Vivek, son. I think this marks an end to the bigger panel discussion that we had. I think we have limited time to take questions. I'll try and take one or two questions if we can. Uh, so there are actually a lot of questions, but I'll pick a couple of them which are more or less interlinked. This question can be directed to both of you, Puneet san and Vivek san. It has connotation related to what's our view on the kind of or insight that we think the new EV policy that is getting drafted will have, and what is the importance of tariff that we are looking at, what kind of tariff that we're looking at, and how do you think it is going to impact the overall market with respect to, do you think Chinese players can come in and rule? Uh, Also the aspect of vocal for local in India, right? So balancing all of these together, what do you think from the policy standpoint as well as from the Chinese market entry standpoint would be there in India going forward? I think both of you can answer that
Yeah.
partially.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with this. I think, yes, I think this EV policy would be a major kind of announcement whenever it is announced. I think it was announced last year, but it was basically a red carpet for Tesla. But I mean, it was not accepted, and there was certain disengagement between Tesla and Indian government, and it didn't go well. But I think government will tweak this year and bring a comprehensive policy. I think, and it will help basically the foreign players, and it will definitely be in line with local for vocal. I think adoption would be there, but I think there would be some relaxation in that. I think, for example, the domestic DVA, I think that time limit has been expanded from 3 years to 5 years, and more and more tweaks are expected in this, so which supports the local production and also helps global OEMs. Considering, I think Chinese, I think this EV policy might not have much in for them, but I think definitely the stance is softening, and let us see. I mean, what announcement government does on this. So maybe Puneet San can add something here.
Yeah, so just adding to what Vivek said, so what we are hearing on a new EV policies and which can be a bigger tweak, is that it won't be a greenfield investment anymore, because I think that can be a big game changer, because if you can invest in your existing facility, I think that is what players like VW, players like Tesla, so they may be looking for. So I think that is, or maybe players like Hyundai, right? So I think we don't really see that tariffs may further come down, because already it's around 15%, what was being proposed earlier. But I think the big change can be, or to what addition to Vivek said is, they may move away from that greenfield phrase. And regarding Chinese, so obviously like the stance is softening, right, as Vivek said, but we think, that obviously government may soften their stand, in terms of collaboration, right? So if you really have a local partner and you want to invest, so I think government can really become soft in that. So I think, but otherwise independent entry we feel is still difficult. So we really don't see. And then, just in the interest of time, another question is, should auto component suppliers invest for ICE, right? So here, we feel that ICE has a long way to go in India. So obviously ICE, when we talk about ICE, we are talking about technologies like CNG, which will be used, flex fuels, ethanol, right? So I think primarily we have a long way to go. And then maybe Ankit, you can ask another question there. We have one or two more.
I think, Puneet, one last question in the interest of time. If you can quickly give your view on the PLI scheme. Should it continue? Should it discontinue? And what's the way forward?
Yeah. So obviously, PLI schemes are a big interest area. At least if we see sectors like electronics, right? But in automotive, it has not been a front runner, or has not created the magic, what it was able to create in other industries. So, but nevertheless, I think if we see the component suppliers, I think they are really taking out advantage out of it. But in terms of OEMs, yes, we still, because the commitment is so huge, and the industry is going through a big shift in terms of alternative fuels. So clearly, I think forecasting or seeing the industry how it will be after next 10 years is very difficult. So obviously investment is a big challenge, and PLI demands investments, right? So I think we need a more of a tweak in PLIs, rather than just Vivek said about DVA. So maybe government needs to put some tweak there, rather than really coming out of PLI, because I think that can be a big motivation for the Indian players, or for the players who are investing as a part of PLI scheme.
Got it. So I
Thank
think in the interest of time, we'll take more questions offline. So thank you very much, Puneet san and Vivek san, for an engaging session today. It was wonderful to hear
Yeah,
your
thank you very
views.
much. Yeah, it
Thank
was
you.
it
Yeah,
was
thank
thank you
you.
very much. It was great to be here.
Right. So we have these resources that you can take care of. You can go to our Mobility LinkedIn group and join our YouTube channel as well for more engaging session. We would love to welcome you for the next webinar as part of the series that's happening in May, wherein again Vivek and Puneet would be taking care of the powertrain of the future challenges that lies ahead. So we'll love to host you there as well. So thanks for being the wonderful audience that you have been, and we look forward to more engaging sessions going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.